Hello and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn. And I was just playing with these little magnetic specs balls that I unwound from a ball and made a perfect straight line. And then as I maneuvered to come and focus on the camera, they all just magnetized next to each other and everything I just did got undone. So I have a little sad face. It's okay. I can move past it. And that's perfect because we're going to be talking about ego and other things on today's episode.
Yeah, so this episode is kind of a little bit of a combo platter of everything because when we hopped onto our call together where we chat before this, I was basically like, hey, Krista, what is the deal with everyone's egos this week? Like the amount of, it's not egotistical, and I don't want you to think that it's egotistical. It's just everyone has this very inflated ego thing coming up this week, and not everyone, but it's coming up very proudly for people who have unhealed ego spaces, I guess is what I'm going to say. And I think it's a way of us being challenged to look at those ego spaces, but also just want to preface that for you guys, if you're seeing that in your circles or online, don't engage. Don't engage. If your ego wants to come up, if your ego wants to come up and correct, ask yourself why. Talk to yourself why this is important, because chances are good it's not actually something that's needed. It's something that your ego is not driving, which we're all being pushed to look at our egos. So just want to talk about that. Also, it's a bookend episode. And we're going to talk about the books we read this month. Also, we just have some fun story time. And then also our patrons voted on the episode topic of how to be psychic in casual conversation. And we're going to talk about it casually in this conversation. How to do that.
Psychically, as psychics.
Right? Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because, we work casual conversation, psychic in casual conversation all the time. Good at it and bad at it. And, as you were bringing it up, you're like, the energy feels weird. And so I tuned into the energy too. And I asked for keywords when I'm trying to match astrology to energy. And it was funny because I'm just like Mars, Sun, ego. And I'm just like, Mars and Sun aren't interacting, but then Mars is in the Sun's sign, coming into orb. So coming into the space, getting in the personal bubble of Venus, she's actually creeping up on him. But then on the 22nd, Venus is actually going to stop and turn the other way, and Mars is going to hightail it out of there. So this is a situation where these two are getting close in Leo, the sign of, some people will say ego, some people will say pride. I like Demetra George's use of someone who's unskillfully using the energy available to them might have some ego issues, but we can talk about how you can skillfully use this energy too and make it actually a conscious tool rather than something that's happening at you. Make it happen for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it too. It's also interesting that we want to talk about being psychic in casual conversation when this is happening, and also with Venus going into retrograde soon and all these different things. I'm like, this is a pretty applicable time for that, to be totally honest, especially because, and we've prefaced this already, all of the weird, unprecedented, wonky energy that is coming our way, that is just going to be different, odd things. Even already, the headlines are already reflecting that. We figured out a way to make energy from air, this week.
We're using quasars as telescopes, and
exactly. It's just
seeing new astrophysics. Sorry, I'm very excited about that.
No, it's incredible. It's so cool. It's exactly, but it's that sort of weird stuff is coming up. And also, this is all a sign of our planetary vibration rising, of us getting back more to the time where people can see and sense and hear and know and interact with things. So being psychic in casual conversation is going to become more and more prevalent. Period.
And on top of that, they can see and sense and hear and know and learn. That's what we're getting back into, that I've noticed is we're moving out from reaction to what we experienced into the learning and moving into the next thing, which again is very could be attributed to that sextile we were talking about with Saturn and Jupiter, which is only separate by a degree at this point. So we're in that phase of humanity and society, and we're feeling very active in it. And so with this more personal situation of Venus and Mars, we might be more inclined to, I'm right, you're wrong, listen to what I'm learning right now, I don't care what you're learning right now kind of situations. Or you can channel that fiery energy into manifestation, intuition, making things happen rather than trying to defend things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important to note for sure,
Mhm.
because the defense, and also it's just like I saw a comment on this random video and it was basically like I just got back from a business trip and everyone's flight was delayed or canceled except mine, period. And I was like, that's the ego thing we're talking about. Like, you don't need to include that except mine, period, smiley face. That's not
Yeah.
necessary for the comment. But it's like that like last word energy that keeps coming up that I'm like,
Mhm.
that's weird ego stuff. Like that makes no sense. What is this going on? Like,
Mhm.
just funky
One
things.
one of the really best ways I've found to go from to understand the difference between ego and humility, being able to
Hmm.
really appreciate something rather than shoving it in someone's face, was
Hmm.
actually something I realized during storm chasing, because the
Ooh.
tornado can take you out. And
Hmm.
you sit there and you're chasing a tornado and you're facing it. You're like a city block away from a tornado. And you can be the person who's like, I mean, I do have a selfie with a tornado. It's really cool. But you can be the person who's like, I'm chasing the tornado. Or you can be like, holy cow, look what nature can do. And you just sit there and marvel at it and be glad that you got to witness that. And then you
Yeah.
share with other people what it was like to witness it, so that until they have their experience, they can start learning that feeling,
Hmm. That's
because
very
that's
cool.
where it becomes really cool, right? You're trying to help someone understand the feeling of something that they want when they haven't quite figured out that feeling for themselves yet. So it's the
Hmm.
sharing of that. That's what we do with our books all the time in the
Yeah.
Forgotten Storytellers. We're teaching a feeling so that you can have a proxy of it and then draw it in even more into your life experience.
Hmm.
Speaking of that kind of thing, I feel like now's a good time for you to share about your more magical witnessing of nature and its beings.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to go tell Krista the story and I was like, actually, I think I should tell it on the podcast. And I
I'm
did
dying to
ask
hear
this lovely being, I was like, can I share your story more publicly? And it was basically like little peacocking, like I just want to be known, like kind of energy. So I was like, okay, sure.
it.
Basically, Weston and I discovered the name of one of our house fairies, and I'm going to call him a house fairy or spirit of our house. He's definitely a fairy, in some capacity. He's definitely very attached to our kitchen, and I think he's very attached to Weston in some way. I don't know how just yet, but it doesn't feel like when we move, I don't think he's going to stay behind. It's like the feeling. He's like, we're going anyway. So, and he wasn't here always. Like it's definitely somebody that joined us.
Mhm.
Anyway, we have always had a thing with like finding spices, losing spices. Our spices in our house are like our like additional add-ins, like nuts, right? To, like, that we need to add in for a recipe, those kinds of things. Like I've told you that story before about Weston
Mhm.
like asking for the nuts back, but it's worked with spices. It's been tons of stuff. So the other night, Weston was making turmeric lattes for us, which is something I've been drinking a lot to do anti-inflammatory stuff. So I've been drinking
Yeah.
them almost every night. It also adds a really lovely boost of protein for me, who is a vegetarian and also can't eat eggs. So I'm looking for boosts of protein pretty much everywhere I can get them. Um, so we've been drinking them quite a bit. So the other night I was having horrific period cramps and I was very upset by it. So Weston decided to make them for kind of like the first time. I was the one who's made them pretty much since then, or before then. And so he was making it in the kitchen and he was like, well, how much ginger and how much cinnamon? And I was like, just a little bit of ginger. And then I was like, and a good amount of cinnamon, but like don't go too heavy on it, because if you go too heavy on it, like it's gonna overtake the flavor. And he was like, oh my God. And I was like, what? And he had poured the cinnamon into his hand. And he said that it jumped out of the container and like into the pot, and like all of the cinnamon in his hand had also jumped out of out of his hand and into the pot. So like out of the container and out of his hand at the same time into the pot, completely without his doing. And it was so much, like so much cinnamon. It covered the entire surface area of the pot of milk. And I was like, whoa. And he was like, hold on. And he's like scooping it out, scooping it out. He's like, you offended the cinnamon. And I was like, I wasn't trying to offend the cinnamon. And I was like, obviously, whoever lives in our kitchen like really likes cinnamon. And Wes was like, oh, I think that's his name. And I was just like, and it was an immediate like sort of feeling of like, yeah, that is his name. Like that's his name. And he just finally got acknowledged. And I totally just dissed on the cinnamon. I was like, I'm so sorry. I love cinnamon. I love it in this. It is great. It's nice to meet you. Like, thank you for being around. And it was very much a very fluffy, happy feeling that he was just like, yes, I am here. This is me. So that's who's in our kitchen. His name's Cinnamon. He's fairy. He's adorable. Because every time I've said hi to him since then, it's been like, hello. Like, and he sits in our kitchen, he hangs out in there and cares about our cooking. So yeah, he also likes things messy. So that's part of the reason we've said this before. We have two corners of our kitchen counter that are like very kind of like shoved away. So our kitchen's designed just super weird, like the rest of our house. And they always just accumulate stuff. And we're like, how does this corner keep accumulating things? And we'll like clear it out. And then all of a sudden, water bottles back there and spoons are back there and all these different things. We're like, why is this happening? And it's because he likes messy things. So he is doing it.
Well, it
Anyway.
also sounds like metallic and shiny things end up back there.
Yep. Metallic and shiny things, food stuffs. He likes parts of machines, like parts of like our juice machine will end up back there, or our bread machine will end up back there, and like those sorts of things. It's like, okay, we like machines. So anyway, that was my story this weekend, which was really cute.
He's got a good energy to him, though. I really
he's
like
great. I adore him. I adore him. We're very obviously friends to fairies and boundaries and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So he has a very lovely energy about him as well. He likes our kitchen. So
yeah, I just thought that was really funny that you have this story around the time that we were for Patreons. We recorded that extra video about like how to introduce yourself to guardians of locations and or I guess houses. So if you're interested in that, that is available by the time this video airs. It is available in the Patreon as well. You can get just our little tips on.
And he's different than the ones that grew the tree up here in my office. Very different
I was
energy.
gonna ask that.
Yeah, that's not Cinnamon. He is very focused on like half of the living room and the kitchen is like his happy place.
I'm going to apologize to Cinnamon in advance because the next time I'm there, I know I'm going to make some stupid word pun about cumin or something stupid. So
well, he will completely dose your drink with cinnamon then.
Noted. That's okay. I really love cinnamon. I put it in everything. So
I do too.
Fantastic.
So. Oh, anyway, that's so to be casual in conversation about that, the truth is whether you're talking to, I'm gonna call them I want to call them muggles, but I don't want to call them muggles. Normies. That's what's used in oh, I don't like that one though either.
I don't like that either.
People
use it as like an insult.
Yeah, I don't like that. But there needs to be a word.
Just aren't used to the conversation and aren't used to the same level of, no, I don't want to say consciousness either. Gosh, we've ruined language for intuitive stuff. All of those words have gotten tired.
I know. We need another one. Where they've become bigoted.
Yeah.
Love that.
Just people who aren't interested as much in,
or just people who have not deconstructed their specific brand of either religious trauma or worldview.
Hey, yeah.
That
people
was a really long
people who haven't done the same work.
People who've not done the same work and maybe are not super comfortable with the work or have a very limited perception of what psychic or spiritual work is, which there are many people out there that are still in that space. And then they just don't know, or they're just like, oh, you can see the future, or they just don't understand that space. So and
to be fair, there's a lot in worlds like, okay, I'm very into the Socratic kind of method right now, which we'll understand why in like a month. But another way to combat ego is to realize that just because we know a lot about this doesn't, like, you can ask me to fix a car. I'm not going to be able to help you unless I can like snap my fingers and, wiggle my nose and make it work. I can't fix a car as well as someone who knows a lot about cars. And that person who knows a lot about cars is in the world of cars. And that world of cars may not know a lot about intuition and may have a lot of go-to phrases about intuition. The amount of times that my things that I'm more likely to get offended by are usually people speaking their programming rather than people speaking their minds or their opinions.
I agree
and
with
that's
that.
something to really keep in mind. Like, I can have a conversation with someone, and if they come out with the most cliched response, I'm just like, I know someone who will speak their programming and actually has entirely different opinions and lives entirely differently, but in a conversation will speak the programming as though that's their belief. And you can imagine the conflict that they go through, right? Just because they say it. So it's there in their belief system somewhere, but also it's not in their present like lifestyle.
Exactly. So, no, I completely agree with that. That comes up quite a bit, actually. People who do that. So what I would say to be psychic in casual conversation, a lot of words have actually become a lot more accessible in our common language as of late, which is super cool. And I speak from experience because this was not the case 10 years ago. This is the case now. So you being very psychic in casual conversation comes down to things being like, oh, wow, the energy of that feels really weird. Or something about this is not feeling aligned to me. Or yeah, you don't even have to say like my guides told me to do this thing, because that could be really hard for people because they're like, oh, who are your guides? Are you talking to whatever? And like, I'm not trying to talk about like them being an asshole necessarily, but you just get that like kind of ignorant comment comes out because they don't know. Ignorance in the sense of the word where they just don't know.
And sometimes you just are dealing with jerks. There are both out there.
Yeah, there are both for sure.
Yeah.
But you can very easily be like, no, I have a feeling that's not for me, or I was, guided elsewhere.
It just
Those
doesn't
sorts of
sit right with
things.
me.
It doesn't sit right with me. Those sorts of things are important. Or if you feel like someone needs to do something, your guides are like, hey, tell them this or whatever, that is still your choice. You are more than welcome to make that choice if you'd like to, and be like, hey, I think it would be a really good idea if you did X, Y, and Z thing. If you're getting a message from one of their loved ones and you feel so inclined to do that, always ask for permission. I am highly against that. I have told my guides hard no. I have told loved ones hard no. I keep my mediumship room firmly fucking closed. But if you want to be psychic in casual conversation and you feel the people are receptive and you want to share your pings, just do it in a way where you feel casual about it the best that you can. And that is like one of the biggest tips that I can offer as someone who has to be casual about psychic stuff kind of often. The other thing I will say is people do not all people deserve the spiritual side of you. And that is true. Like, just because you have these abilities, you are turning this on, doesn't mean that every conversation you're entering into, those people are deserving of these, or these people are like open to these things, are going to get anything good out of it. It can actually become a problem for you if you keep trying to share and trying to share and trying to share, but you're not discerning about the people you're trying to share with. It can actually undo some of the work you've done, because it will, if you keep getting negative reactions over and over and over again, it's really hard to continue to stay into that flow. So just be really discerning about kind of that space too.
Well, and it's also important to remember that just because you have a hit about it doesn't mean that they're ready for it. A lot of the time, the one thing that I learned early on, and I'm like in my teens doing phone readings, doing the basic Tupperware parties, but it was me coming to people's houses with a potluck and doing a gallery reading, is I cannot cheat someone out of their process just because I know how it might go smoother, because they still need to learn it their way. And it's like, you don't want them to skip a grade that they needed just by giving them the answers.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, don't help them cheat on a test. Don't make it harder for them, and don't like pick on them as they're going through it. But also sometimes it's just not the right time. And we have to learn to sort of sit with watching people go through their process and supporting them in that, rather than trying to fix it. Just hard.
Also, people straight up won't hear. If they're not ready to hear, they won't hear what you said.
No.
They literally will not, absolutely not hear it. Like, the way I equate it is when I was in my super abusive relationship, the people who came to me and were like, he's abusive, this is bad, you need to get out of here. I didn't hear that.
Nope.
What I heard was, you're attacking my relationship, you don't support me, blah, 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 which is not what they said. Yeah. That is what I heard. So that's the same thing with psychic stuff though, too. If you're going to be psychic in casual conversation, by all means do it, but talk about your stuff, not their stuff, unless you feel they are ready to hear, because they're not going to hear unless you're, doing it that way.
And in that same, because I can think of exactly the moment where this happened to me as well. I heard, give up on that person, be a failure, like admit defeat. Not all of it, a very martial individual here, but not, so some people might perceive that as not encouraging, as give up, you're not good enough, you're a failure, all those things. And you're actually not saying that at all. You're saying you deserve better, but that's not how they're going to hear it. The mind is a weird, wonky thing when it is fixed on something.
Absolutely. So it's going to come up a lot in the next couple months. This need to be casually psychic, casually spiritual. More people are going to be doing awakening stuff, because there's a little bit of so before in 2020, people who are already kind of inclined or kind of excited about this finally had time to experience it and go through the things they needed to go through. So I think that was a huge wave of awakenings. About 6-8 months ago, we also had kind of a secondary one, which is not necessarily a new group of people awakening. It felt like the people who really awoken in 2020 finally reprioritized themselves again and got to re-experience that kind of awakening space. Now we're entering into a space where honestly, the energy looks a little bit like people who are, never really thought about spirituality or like didn't really want to care about it, are kind of just like, well, fuck it, everything else is going wonky. What is going on over here? Can it help me navigate this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And that wave of awakening is about to hit. And so the people who start in 2020 or even, before then, are going to be there to be casually psychic in conversation and normalize and ground the spiritual energy. So things that we'll see us talking about, I can guarantee over the next couple months, is going to be like new age deconstruction stuff. This is a new age belief we don't need, because unfortunately a lot of the very heavily new age community is going to push and jump on this new awakening kind of bandwagon, and that's not what we do here. So it's going to be a very interesting sort of grounding, sort of acknowledging, sort of understanding how people and the universe relate to one another experience. So the need to be casually psychic, and also don't forget to bug your guides about it. If you're like, if I need to bring up something about spirituality in this conversation, please make it inevitable that something like this comes up. Works all the time. Worked for me last night. So by all means do that too. So it doesn't have to just be on you.
Yeah. Remember, you're part of a team here in the physical and with anything that's non or less physical that you're working with. And that's another thing to keep in mind, this whole deconstruction of the ego thing. The counter to ego, a lot of people will say, is humility. And that's so hard and frustrating to try to like figure out. I actually saw a TikTok the other day that was like confidence and humility. And I was just like, those sound like two total opposite things. Confidence is, I know I can do this. Ego is, I'm going to shove it in your face that I can do this and probably better than you. Humility, again, we get back to something that feels rather Socratic is, I know I can do this. I know you can do it. I know you can do that. I know I'm here for you if you need help for that. And if you're finding it really hard to watch someone go through something when you know what they should do, one thing that you can do that's going to maintain their boundaries, but also give them the option is, I have ideas for that. If you're interested, let me know. I did this with someone the other day where I was like, I have a resource for this. I'm not going to bring it up again until you ask me for it, because I don't want to be annoying or anything, but I've done a lot of research with it. So let me know if I can help with that. The end. Moving on to another topic. Good. I have a lot of experience in life where people are like, I don't want to hear you talk about that anymore. So I learned that like you give them the invitation to invite you to talk about it when they're ready.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that just about covers the space we're entering into. Just be careful with your egos. If you feel like you want to snap back at something, pause, ask why, then construct a response. Because it's just, especially this week, it's just really ego heavy, very unhealed heavy, unhealed responses, unhealed out loud. That's what I'm going to say. It's unhealed out loud this week.
Yeah. You might find that things that you didn't know weren't quite healed yet make themselves available and known, so that over the next month, between now and like the beginning of October, really, we can focus on that. Because remember, someone you're observing is probably unhealed, but we are still here too. So we probably also are doing our own healing.
Yeah, very much. Cool. What'd you read this month?
So I've been in my scholarly efforts, I've been learning a little bit of Greek. I've been working through Valen's books 2 and 4. And in my reading, I read Unmasking Autism, because I got my diagnoses and I wanted to know more about that. And I felt called out. Really, really great book. Not as long as you would think it is when you're looking at the Kindle or the audiobook and it's like, you have 24 hours left in this or whatever. Half the book is its citations, which I really appreciate, because there are citations, and in the ebook they're linked so you can go straight to them, and it comes with a workbook. It's amazing. My husband is reading it right now. And then as far as fiction, I read Tarnished Are the Stars. There is nothing wrong with this book. Formulaically, it's good. The characters are fine. I just wasn't into it. Even though there are a lot of themes in it that normally I would have liked. It's a sci-fi, reminded me a lot of Cinder, but with a lot more representation across the board there. I think the representation of the ace individual could have done better. You know, they spent so much time on him being like princely and naive that we really didn't get into the whole experience of it. And then the one couple in the book got tons of attention on it. And as someone who was more relating to the prince kid, I was just like, well, there goes that. But the book overall is probably going to really appeal to people who have different interests, especially if you're into sapphic romance. It doesn't get spicy, but it is just this exploring of, you know, coming from different worlds. It's grumpy is how I would put the couple as well, which is something that's definitely worth looking into. So yeah, Tarnished Are the Stars. It's probably not going to end up on my bookshelf, but it might want to end up on yours.
Okay, nice. I read Mythos by Stephen Fry this month, and I loved it. I listened to the audiobook. I cannot stress enough, you want to listen to the audiobook. It sounds like Homer is telling you these myths around a campfire. Like, genuinely it does. It was really, really good. It was really well done. Stephen Fry is just a badass. And you can tell, loves these deities and loves these stories. It was a 24-hour audiobook, so that's most of what I read this month. That is so much.
And that is
it's
not
so
mostly
much
citations.
No, it is not mostly. It is barely citations. It is literally just 24 hours of myths, and it starts at the beginning of time and goes till the age of heroes, basically. You do not get the heroes myths.
No, because they're in a whole other book.
They're in a whole other book, which, yeah. I will not be probably reading that one for a while. The heroes do not interest me nearly as much, so I probably will not be leaning in on that one. He also has an entire Trojan War book as well, for all the myths around the Trojan War. So he basically redoes the Iliad. But anyway, really cool. Highly recommend it. Wonderful resource. My neurodivergent brain had a really hard time because there wasn't a storyline I was trying to work through, and I wasn't reading it on paper, so I wasn't excited to draw on the book, which I know sounds silly, but like when I read it on paper, I annotate and I underline and blah, 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 and like whatever. But I was listening to it, and so I did kind of have a hard time getting through the 24-hour bulk of it. But I did it, and I'm really happy I did. I loved it. I mean, it was great. Now I'm reading, I'm not done with, but I'm about halfway through with A Marvelous Light. I have it by Freya Marsky. And it's super good so far. So I don't want to recommend it or anything yet, because obviously I haven't finished it. But it's super good so far, and I really like it. And it is gay, and it is magically it's secret magicians in 1908 London.
Nice. Good selling point.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, I'm reading The Sun and the Star, the Percy Jackson side stories, Rick Riordan and someone else. And for everybody who's like, why can't you remember the other authors' names? I do a blog post, and I actually link to bookstore.org, where you can find your indie bookstore and buy from them. So that post will be out later today. The Sun and the Star will obviously be in the July post. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Digging it though.
Yeah.
I wanted to read more. I mean, obviously the Greek myths is queer stories. And then A Marvelous Light is a queer story, and I'm going to continue reading queer stories throughout July. That is my commitment, because I wanted to do that for Pride Month, but now, especially after the Supreme Court stuff, I'm going to absolutely spam queer stories to everything. So that's what we're doing over here.
In case you didn't know, The Sun and the Star, yes, also queer.
I know.
I'm like 2 chapters in, and I'm already living in the world. So I'm very happy with it.
Rick Riordan's a master. Honestly.
Oh my gosh.
It's fabulous.
Skilled and talented. It's good.
Awesome. Well, that is just about our episode for this week. We're not going to answer necessarily a question this week from our patrons, because 1, we don't have a lot of them, and 2, we just talked about like 17 different things on this episode. We're going to hold some space for that. I do want to say, and I'm just going to kind of just put this out there, there is going to be some fun announcements from us in the coming, like July. In July, there's going to be some fun announcements from us. So because we love you all, we just wanted to put that out there so you guys can get prepped and excited. We're excited. Really, really excited, actually. So
we're reworking our whole lives to make these things happen, and we're pumped about them. It's gonna be good.
It's lots of big change up in here. But good big change. Yeah, we're really stoked on it. So just gonna throw that in there. Of course, if you want more access to us, you want to watch that bonus video that we just talked about how to greet and understand guardians of spaces, all of that is in the Patreon. You can go ahead and join us there. You can also vote on episode topics, all sorts of fun stuff. And yeah, other than that, I think we're good to go. Happy post full moon to all of you. We're recording this on the full moon, so we're in the throw of it. Hope it went great. And yeah, we hope you take all of this energy and you go make some
magic. Okay, that should have been perfect. According to everybody last week, I'm trying real hard. I think we got it.
I know, everyone was like, it was perfect. And honestly, the delay, you guys, it's literally like 3 seconds from when I say it to when Krista says it. Like when we're at, so
and on my screen, I say
perfect.
it right with you.
That is so counterintuitive. Oh my God. So okay.
But we do it because you love it, and we love that you love it, and it's fun for us too. So
bye.
Bye.